Nothing that Trump is doing is going to stun me. What is stunning me is the absence of humility on the part of my party. We just dropped $1.5 billion on a presidential election. And if you stop any American on the street and say, what does the Democratic Party stand for? They can't tell you. They have no idea. And if you pushed, they'd say, well, we know you hate Trump. We know that you love trans people. We know you love abortion, and we know you love open borders. That's our brand right now, after dropping $1.5 billion. That's not good.
Welcome back to Just the Facts with me, Jill Wine-Banks, the Watergate Girl. Today is the start of week 3 of Trump 2.0. And if you're like me, you feel overwhelmed by executive orders, lawsuits, deportations that really aren't because people are being rounded up but let back in, tariffs that were on and are now off. We have a lot of stuff that's happening because of that. The stock market dropped precipitously. It's now coming back up because the tariffs are off again. We're seeing the firings of civil servants who are protected by civil service laws, FBI agents, FBI leaders, Department of Justice lawyers, inspectors general, and EEOC commissioners and others who all have terms that have not expired and so are being violated in terms of the law by their being fired. We have had a mass amount of unqualified nominations for the cabinet and hearings that have not been what I would consider to be effective in exposing how bad they are. We've seen Republicans caving and doing whatever Donald Trump and Elon Musk, who seems to be really in control much more than Donald Trump. So if you feel like I do, you're going to want to listen to today's episode, especially if you are concerned about how Democrats are messaging or failing to message. They haven't even been able to convince Democrats to get out and vote or to protest in the streets. I want to make sure we don't have that for the next 4 years. And if we want any semblance of a democracy 4 years from now, I think we all have to get out there and start acting. We have to know why Trump won, why the Democrats lost. We have to do better in messaging. That, to me, is one of the most important things, is how we message and what we're saying and what channels we're using. So I am thrilled today to have the absolute perfect guest. He was the last guest on iGen Politics before we shut down that show. And he is a supreme master of messaging. I want you all to be part of the resistance that the sisters-in-law have started. And if you want to curl up instead and watch movies, you're going to watch Billy Ray's movies because they are great. And I just want to mention a few of them. Captain Phillips, The First Hunger Games, Shattered Glass, Color of Night, Richard Jewell, The Comey Rule, Breach, so many more. I just can't even name them all. They're all great. What matters, though, for today's discussion is his work in helping Democrats do a better job of crafting messages and communicating. And I want to talk to him about how you can make those messages emotional enough to get through to both Democrats and independents and even some Republicans who are starting to see the impact of all of these promises being fulfilled. So, Billy, welcome to the show. I can't wait to start the discussion.
It's such a pleasure to be with you again. Great to see you, and
Thank
very thrilled to be your friend. Okay, so let's
Thank
start
you.
with let's start with some
Yeah.
basics.
Yes.
Okay, nothing that Trump is doing is going to stun me. What is stunning me is the absence of humility on the part of my party. We just dropped $1.5 billion on a presidential election. And if you stop any American on the street and say, what does the Democratic Party stand for?
Yeah.
They can't tell you. They have no idea. And if you pushed, they'd say, well, we know you hate Trump. We know that you love trans people. We know you love abortion, and we know you love open borders. That's our brand right now, after dropping $1.5 billion. That's not good.
Yeah.
There were 19 million Americans who had voted for Biden who did not vote for Vice President Harris. 19 million. As anyone who's ever run a business can tell you, getting customers is hard, and losing customers is unforgivable. And we just lost 19 million of them. What's missing is a moment where the Democratic Party says, okay, we hear you. Whatever we were selling, you're not buying. And whether you like or loathe Donald Trump, you must recognize that was the most remarkable comeback in American political history. Okay? I loathe this guy, but you have got to recognize what just happened. We just lost to a guy with 91 indictments hung on him. Didn't hurt him. Okay? So, step one is humility, which we don't have yet. Step two, there has to be a face that is the leader of the Democratic Party who can message from top down. We don't have that either. It's not Hakeem Jeffries, whom I know and love, but it's not him. It's certainly not Chuck Schumer. We don't have a nominee yet for 2028, and I doubt that Ken Martin is going to all of a sudden become the face of the party. So we have to figure that part out. It's really important. But I think most importantly, what we need to understand is what has so turned off the American public about us and about the way we message. And what I encourage my electeds to do, I mean, I do messaging for, 80, 85 sitting members of the House and Senate. And what I encourage them to do is go a week without saying the word Trump. Just don't say his name. Because everything that we do sounds obsessed and sounds bitter and sounds like our focus is so totally on Trump, when in fact, we have been saying to the American public for 9 years now, this guy is an asshole. And the American public keeps saying back to us, we know. We know. That's what we like about him. He's an asshole. And he bothers you. And the more assholic he becomes, the happier we get.
Wow.
So stop telling us what an asshole he is, because you sound dumb, which is true. So, yes, when he nominates someone like Tulsi Gabbard or Kristi Noem or RFK
Kennedy. Yeah.
Yes, of course, we need to comment on that. But what we need to say is, how does this lower the price of eggs? How does this make it easier for you to get a home? How does this make you safer? How does this make us collectively safer? How is it good if more people get polio? In what way does that increase the robustness of the community, the American community as a whole? It can't just be Donald Trump nominated these people, therefore they're wrong. That ethos has been roundly rejected by the American voting public. It has to be, we are now in the position of public advocacy. Our only job is not to take shots at Trump. Our job is to speak for the voiceless, which is now the American public, as this assault on our democracy and on our fundamental way of life takes place. That's my belief.
Let me ask you some specific questions.
Sure.
Because in terms of great messaging, while I am, of course, appalled by the Make America Great or Make America Healthy Again, there is something that's effective about it. I occasionally, by mistake, get messages from Donald Trump. And about, I guess, at least a week ago, because as soon as I got it, I wrote you and said, help, you have to come on the show and help me. The message, I'm going to read part of it, was, a message from President Trump. Below is a list of the accomplishments of the first 24 hours, and I only have you to thank. And then he goes through a list of things that is written in black and then a big bold red. It says, declared a national emergency at our southern border. The invasion will end. Of course, there is no invasion. enacted an America First trade policy. We will no longer be ripped off. We're not being ripped off. Stop the war on American energy. Drill, baby, drill. And it goes on with really simple phrases that every one of them is a lie. They aren't true, but they sound so good. Granted pardons and communications and commutations to the January 6 hostages. This injustice has ended. And then at the end, he says, of course, none of this would have been possible without you and your support, which of course is the next thing. Click and give me some money. But he does also say, tell me what I should do next. Answer me. And then, of course, it's the, give me some money. So what is the equivalent that Democrats could be doing to this kind of messaging that, even though not true, is getting emotionally to the people that are receiving it? I get it and I laugh, but most of the people who get it, it's not an accident that they got it. So what would be the message if you were, let's start with, you mentioned Martin, who is now the new head of the DNC. I don't know who the face of the Democratic Party is going to be. Is it going to be deputy chair of the DNC, David Hogue? Is it going to be the chair of the, I don't know who. Hakeem Jeffries is a great communicator, but somehow he hasn't broken through. We've seen that. But whoever it is, what would you tell that person to send out as the first message that they send out? Although it's too late, they've already done that. But okay, what would be the next message?
Okay. So the first thing to understand is, in this one case, and it's the only one I can think of, you have to take Trump at his word. Okay? When he says, without you and your support, none of this would have been possible. That's true. In other words, stop treating Trump like the problem. Treat him like the symptom. Okay? The problem is the 70 plus million Americans who voted for him. That's the problem.
Right.
Okay? That's what we've learned in the last 9 years. Trump floats on that tide, but Trump's not the tide. The tide is the Americans who are so pissed off and so angry that they can be talked into things like suspending the Constitution and not even notice it. Okay? So step one is to realize Trump's not the issue. Okay? First, there was a poll that was just done, and I'm going to answer your question, I promise.
Yeah.
There was a poll that I just saw. They asked Americans, what percentage of Americans do you think are transgender? And the American public said 21%. Okay? The answer is less than 1. They said, what percentage of Americans do you think are Jewish? And America said 30%. The answer is less than 2. They asked, what percentage of Americans do you think are atheist? And America said 33%. The answer is less than 3. Okay? So what we need to recognize is that white Christian Americans have been told that they're in a minority now. Okay? And of course, they are going to back into tribal corners and come out swinging. So when he says, yeah, we're shutting down the borders.
Right.
Sounds great. Yeah, we're releasing the January 6th hostages. Sounds great. Because they think they have to fight in order to survive. So step one is understanding what the American political electorate thinks it looks like. All right? Now, the fact is that 68% of this country is Christian. I am not. But 68% of this country is Christian. 88% of the homes in this country have a Bible. The average has 4. Okay? In the Democratic platform, where you and I were at that convention together, and you were so kind to me, which I've never forgotten and will never forget. But in that Democratic convention, the Democratic platform mentioned Hinduism, Buddhism, Judaism, Islam. And you know how many mentions of Christianity there were in there? Zip. 0. In what business can you say to 68% of your customers, you don't matter? I'm so busy worrying about these other 32% that I'm going to ignore you and expect to survive as a business. You can't. It's suicide. Okay?
I agree with you, and you keep mentioning facts, those are very interesting facts. They think 33%, it's 3%.
Right.
But facts are not getting through. I've tried having conversations with Trump supporters. And
no, I understand. I hear you.
so I'm asking, how do we get that emotional? Obviously, you're right. We can't ignore and not have that as part of our message, but we need an emotional message. What is that emotional message?
Okay.
What will make people understand that they are not omitted from the platform? What will let's say the poor people of America who are going to be hurt the most by the policies. What about the world, which he's just eliminated the entire U.S. aid assistance all over the world? And it's going to affect everybody. It's going to make us far less secure, as will Kristi Noem, as will any of the other cabinet nominees who I still am hoping won't be confirmed, but I know they will be. So what can we as citizens say to Trump supporters or to people who just sat out this election? What can we do? What grassroots effort can we do? And how do we find the face of the Democratic Party?
That part's really complicated. That part I don't know how to do, because you're 4 years out from a presidential election, and I'm not sure how that's going to shake out. But here's what I can tell you. Step one, as I said, is humility. Step one is to say to the American people, wow, we heard you. We really heard you.
Yeah.
Okay? And when I say we heard you, here's what I mean. When they put minimum wage on the ballot in Florida, it got 60%. Okay? In a state where we always lose. This core Democratic idea got 60%. They put it on the ballot in Arkansas, it got 62. Home of Sarah Huckabee Sanders. They put it on the ballot in Missouri, home of Josh Hawley, and it got 67. These are states where we always lose, but this core Democratic idea, hugely popular. 2/3 of the country agrees with us on abortion. They agree with us on guns. By the way, if you stop calling it universal background checks, which everybody hates, and start calling it violent history checks, 95% of America comes with you. 95%.
Well, there's a real good specific thing.
Okay.
That's a good specific in terms of what you say. Instead of calling it one thing, you call it violent history check. So, great idea.
All right. Now, beyond that, they agree with us on protecting Social Security and Medicare. They agree with us on the environment. They agree with us on lowering the cost of prescription drugs. They agree with us on decriminalizing cannabis. They agree with us on everything. Okay. And yet they don't vote with us. Why? I'm going to tell you why, in my opinion, okay? Because we tell them how to talk. We tell them that they have to say pregnant person instead of pregnant woman. It just sounds ridiculous. By the way, if you are a transgender person, if you are a man who is trapped in a woman's body and you become pregnant and you want to call yourself a pregnant person because you don't like the term pregnant woman, go ahead. I'll fight for your right to do it. But I'm not going to tell some other voter they have to call you that. Yeah. No, I'm not going to do it. It takes their liberty away. No, I'm not going to tell people they have to say chest feeding instead of breastfeeding. That's insane. No, I'm not going to tell people that they can't say criminals anymore. They have to say justice-involved individuals. That's lunacy. And no, I'm not going to start calling homeless people unhoused, as if somehow there's someone sleeping in a cardboard box on Wilshire Boulevard near my home who's going to say, you know what? When I was called homeless, I really felt down in the dumps. But now that they're calling me unhoused, I feel some dignity, and I'm going to go take a shower and get a job. It's just stupid. But that's why we lose. That's why we lose. And anyone who tells you that the anti-trans ads that Trump ran in the last 2 weeks didn't kill Kamala is just not paying attention. I was watching football every Saturday and every Sunday in the fall, and that's where those ads ran. And every football fan was seeing, she's for they, them, he's for you. Okay? There's a reason of all of his campaign money, he spent $210 million placing that ad. It killed her because it felt true. When she's on there on video saying, yeah, I think that an undocumented worker who commits a crime and sits in a prison and wants gender reassignment surgery, the taxpayer should pay for it. Now, she said it in 2019, and I bet she didn't even mean it, but it stuck because
Yeah.
it felt part of a larger narrative, which is that we are so busy worrying about the people who are outside the mainstream that we have totally forgotten the mainstream.
Yeah.
It fit in that narrative. So, step one is to get rid of that as an idea. And I don't mean to sound callous, but every transgender person that I talk to, and I talk to several, they all agree with me. You cannot help transgender people by losing elections. Okay? You cannot help immigrants by losing elections. You cannot help the 19-year-old girl who needs an abortion by losing elections. You have to win. You have to gain
Yeah.
power. And then you have to appropriately legislate. So, step one is aim yourself to the big middle. Okay? Start to talk to the 68% of America that is Christian, that thinks you hate them. Let's start there. 68% is a pretty big number. Start to welcome gun owners back into the party and stop treating them all like they've walked into a movie theater and shot 80 people. They haven't. There are zillions of Americans who own guns, who stow them correctly, who are safe, who teach their children the rules, who train regularly. They're not a threat to
Yeah.
anybody. Okay? They're not the problem. Stop acting like they are. So that's step one, is aim bigger. Okay? Think about the larger mission. Step two, how do we message that? Okay?
Yeah.
Keep it about the price of eggs. Keep it about the price of insulin. Keep it about the affordability of a new home. All right? And what I would say after I had declared to America, this is what we actually stand for as Democrats. These are the things we actually believe. What I would say is, you do not have a voice in the White House anymore. You do not have a voice in the court system anymore, but you have a voice in the Democratic Party. And we are going to go to bat for you for the next 2 years and the 2 years after that. And we are going to fight on every level that we can to advocate for you because you matter. And it doesn't matter if the president tells you that you don't. You do. You matter to your family. You matter to your community. You matter to our collective future. You matter to our country. You matter to me. And I am going to battle for you every day. And where the Republicans are right, I will vote with them. Where they are doing something smart, I will support them. Where they are crossing the line and hurting Americans in the working class and the middle class, we will battle and we will be tireless. Not because the opponent is Donald Trump. Donald Trump is immaterial. We will go to battle because you matter and you are our mission. You are our North Star. You're the reason we're here. We have never lost sight of that. That would
So
be my message.
you mentioned something that I want to follow up on, because when you point out correctly that Americans in overwhelming numbers, way more than 50%, believe in what are in fact the policies and values of the Democratic Party when it comes to
Absolutely.
all of those main issues. Somehow, Donald Trump, and I'm going to use him as because it's all Republicans, but Donald Trump has really started this and made it effective, has convinced people that that is what the Republicans stand for and that the Democrats are the opposite of it. And this takes me back to in college, in a psychology class, a political science combination psychology class, did a survey in Southern Illinois, which is heavily Republican. And if you told people a policy, they would, yeah, I like that. If you said, but that's the Democratic policy, they would say, well, then I don't like it. They really did associate Democrats, oh, bad, can't vote Democratic, I'm a Republican. But they loved what the policies actually were.
Correct.
And so I'm worried that we are at a point in America where that's what's happening, is let's face it, Donald Trump won by enough votes that it's not questionable because people actually believe that he's going to help them, when you and I both know that his policies and Elon Musk's actions are going to hurt those very people who supported him. And they all thought, well, oh, he's going to only deport bad people, not my family members who are here without documentation, when, of course, they're going to all be rounded up. Now, as I mentioned in my opening, it's turning out that most of the people who have been rounded up are being let back into the country. They are not actually being deported. So he's not even doing that. But I bet you if you ask 90 people, 89 of them are going to say, yeah, they're mass deportations. We're safer, when in fact, of course, we aren't. So how do we convince people that democratic values and policies are the ones that are actually going to help them? How do we make those facts be believed?
Okay, let's go back to 1994. In 1994, Americans forget this, but in 1994, Democrats had held the House for 44 consecutive years.
Wow.
It's hard to believe now with the House flipping back and forth so constantly. Yeah. But Democrats had held the House since 1950, 44 years. Okay? And a group of people, led by Frank Luntz, sat down with Newt Gingrich and Robert Dole and said, okay, whatever we're doing is not working. And we need to restate what the Republican Party is, which became the Contract with America.
Right.
Okay? And the Contract with America said things like, we believe in a balanced budget amendment. We believe in term limits, pretty down the middle stuff.
Yeah.
And said, this is what our party brand is. And Newt Gingrich, who I believe is evil, but is not dumb. Okay? Newt Gingrich knew that 70% of America believed in school prayer, but he left it out of the Contract with America because he said, if we go after a social issue, that's what they'll land on. They'll say, there go those crazy Bible-thumping Republicans again, and we will lose steam. So he left it out. He just went with the down-the-middle stuff that he knew would work. And the Contract with America swept the Republicans back into power in the House in 1994. That was a huge midterm loss for Clinton. Okay. But it started not with them screaming about Bill Clinton. It started with them saying, this is what we are. Okay? Which is why the first thing I said to you was, we just dropped $1.5 billion on a presidential campaign, and no one knows what we stand for.
Yeah.
So step one is for the Democratic Party to state what it actually believes in. Okay? In a way that is attractive and concise and bumper stickery, which we don't tend to do.
Right.
Okay? But it's
important point there, Billy, is bumper stickery. That is the level at which communications become effective.
Correct.
And it's not good to have a very long explanation. It has to be something that is quotable.
Okay. Ready for one? Okay.
Yes, I am. Tell me.
Democracy lowers the price of eggs. Let's go with that. Okay. That says exactly who we are. And by definition, it says that the other side is opposed to both. Okay.
Although democracy didn't sell in the last election, let's face it. We kept saying democracy is at risk, and people went, "It's not working for me. I don't care."
Yeah, but by the same token,
couldn't you say Democrats will lower the price of eggs?
No, I think democracy is the idea, because what it says is, if you vote for people who actually care about your values, they will then go fight for your values. Now, this has to be paired with a disastrous economic policy, which raises the price of eggs, which is coming. Like, you don't have to worry about this stuff because of the decision-making process in the Trump White House. Most of the things that they decide will be wrong. And so, like, you can just sort of set your watch by the fact that if they really do deport a zillion people, well, the price of everything's going to go up.
Of course.
Do you know that 25% of the construction workers in America are undocumented? 25%. And by the way, in Big Red, Texas, that number is 60%.
Wow.
60% of the construction workers in Texas are undocumented. Okay. I live here in Los Angeles where Pacific Palisades and Altadena just burned to the ground. That's tens of thousands of new homes and businesses that need to be rebuilt. Do you know what the percentage of undocumented workers that are in the construction business out here is? It's astronomical. Who's going to rebuild those houses if all those people are sent back over the border? And what are those houses going to cost? Right? There's a real, let me give you another one. Right now, if you lined up every military age eligible American, 74% of them could not qualify for the military because they either couldn't pass the physical or can't read at a 6th grade level.
Right.
74%. Okay. So why do we not talk about health and education as national security issues? Why? Why won't Democrats talk about them in that way? They absolutely and directly impact our military preparedness, health and education. Why don't we talk about it that way? Why? It makes no sense. Why do we always talk about things in the most touchy-feely, annoying way possible, where all the language we use sounds like it was dreamed up in the Harvard faculty lounge? Like, we're out there trying to fight the fight on abortion, and we're talking about bodily autonomy? Are you kidding me? Who the hell knows what bodily autonomy means? It's
So
just dumb.
what would you say? What would your words be?
I would say I don't want to live in a world of government-mandated pregnancy. Period. That's what taking away that right is. It creates government-mandated pregnancy.
And why aren't we talking about, for example, you're talking about national security, with the firings of FBI leaders and the threat to fire thousands of FBI agents. And it's I have to say, I just got an email from the FBI agent who was in charge of our Watergate investigation saying, what is happening to our country? This is illegal. Why are my friends in the FBI being threatened with being fired? They have civil service protections. Why aren't we talking about the fact that we are less safe if we don't have an FBI? If we lose thousands of agents, if we lose thousands of prosecutors, which is what is happening, what's going to happen to our country? We're going to be a lot less safe. Why is that not clear to everyone in this country, Democrat and Republican alike? Why aren't Democrats using that message?
I got a better question for you.
Yeah.
Why in the fight to prevent gun violence, don't we say we're on the side of the cops? We don't think the criminals should outarm and outgun our police. That leads to chaos. That leads to disorder. That leads to anarchy. Why don't we take the gun issue and make it a pro-police issue? Of course, with the FBI firing people, we need to say America got less safe today.
Yeah.
Ask your congressman why. Ask your member of Congress why. We got less safe today. I don't believe that the middle of America, when I say that, I mean that politically, not geographically.
Yeah. Right.
I don't believe that the middle of America believes that the FBI is a danger. I believe they believe that the FBI is their friend and their protector. And I think they know that this is personal animus. We should be talking about that.
But they don't care. We need to make them care. We need some emotional message that will make people not just know that they need the FBI. I mean, just think if with this offer of a buyout, if 10% of federal employees accept this buyout, first of all, it's going to decimate the upper ranks because those are the people who would be eligible for a pension. The people at the bottom end are going to be in serious trouble if they lose their jobs. But how do we make people realize that there will be no services? We aren't going to get Social Security checks. We aren't going to get SNAP checks. We aren't going to, there will be no people to fulfill the functions of the federal government. How do we make people care about that?
I'll be honest with you. I don't think you can. I think you're going to have to get to a place where the Social Security checks stop and the SNAP checks stop and all of the things that the federal government does that we don't think about stop. And then I think you're going to have. Um, there's a saying that Chuck Colson used famously back in the Watergate days: "When you've got them by the balls, their hearts and minds will follow." Okay, when the price of eggs gets high enough, and the Social Security checks stop, and the SNAP checks stop, and the bridges crumble, and nothing works in the federal government, people are going to start saying, "Where the fuck did all those services go?" And the answer will be really clear.
But
I'm
Donald
afraid,
Trump will say that the answer is it's Joe Biden's fault. It's the
won't matter.
Democrats' fault.
But look at how reflexively you do that. Okay? Look at how we are so beaten and scarred that we immediately, whenever anyone has a good idea, we always say, well, wait a minute, Trump will invalidate it. Stop it. Listen to me.
I'm being realistic, though, Billy.
Okay.
I am not stopping. My first reaction after the election was, I'm done. I'm out. I'm not. And then I went, he can't have what he wants. I am staying in this fight. I encourage everyone who's listening, watching us today, to stay in the fight.
Of course.
Form grassroots neighborhood organizations so that you can figure out how to get to your congresspeople. Illinois is pretty good. My congresspeople, my senators, they're fine. I have to focus on what I can do to help Indiana and Wisconsin.
Absolutely true.
And I will do that.
The first thing is, let us stop mystifying Trump and making him this mythical creature. Okay, because remember, the last time he was president, people threw him out of office.
Right.
His performance got him thrown out of office. Right? He's great when he's running as an outsider. When he actually has to demonstrate performance a la COVID, he doesn't have the goods, and the Americans figure it out. So that's coming, okay? And I don't personally believe he's going to run again, but if they somehow reconfigure the Constitution to allow him to run again, he'll have to run on his performance, and he'll be 82.
Yeah.
Okay, something like that. Let's not worry about that right now. There's a famous story from the Civil War. Robert E. Lee had won a series of victories at Chancellorsville, at Fredericksburg, where he was outmanned, but he was just such a better general than the people he was up against that he won. And when U.S. Grant took over the Union Army, all of his generals were sitting in a tent talking about, oh, Bobby Lee, and what a genius Bobby Lee was and what they couldn't do against Bobby Lee. And he said, stop it. Stop talking about what Bobby Lee's doing to you and start thinking about what you're going to do to Bobby Lee. And he met Robert E. Lee in battle at the Wilderness and got his ass kicked the first time. And he woke up the next morning and he said, we're moving forward. And his troops went bananas because every other general after facing Robert E. Lee retreated.
Yeah.
Grant kept coming after him, and the word was that Grant doesn't scare worth a damn. Okay, and he caught him, knew how to beat him, and did. Right. So let's stop talking about Donald Trump, and all the magic potions he's got in his bag. Let's start defining who we are, and let's actually do what our job is, which is to advocate for the American people. They will figure it out. They will see what we're fighting for, and they will see what the results are of Donald Trump being president. But let's stop our hysteria. Let us stop our idol worship of this guy. Let's get back to the brass tacks of delivering for the American people. That's our job right now. It is not our job to scare the shit out of them. It is our job to say to them, we're fighting for you.
So let's look at what are a couple of bumper stickers. Your story about Ulysses S. Grant reminds me of, I was on a really steep mountain and I was like, I don't think I can make it to the top. And the person I was with said, turn around and look at what you've already accomplished. Don't look at that. Look at where you are. And I think that's good advice, is to just keep on trucking and to look at how much you've done so that it encourages you to do more. But if you were a bumper sticker printer, what bumper stickers would you have? I'm ready to put some on my car. What would
Okay,
they be?
let me think about that. The first thing I
Okay.
would say is, and it's a cliche, but it's a good one. Your name is not what people call you. Your name is what you answer to. Okay?
Yeah.
So when they say that we are the far left and that we are the party of pregnant persons and not pregnant women, and we're the party of justice involved individuals and not people who use the word criminals, right? Step one is stop answering to that. Okay? We're Democrats. There's something noble about that. Every single piece of progress in American history in the last, I don't know, 50 years has come as a result of our party. Okay? Every forward motion has been us trying to make
Yeah.
America better. Every one of them. Okay? There is that muscle memory existent in the American public.
Yeah.
The problem is they identify us as the party of government, and there's an entire generation of Americans that have never seen government work. Okay? Remember, we took it for granted. America won World War II. America did the Marshall Plan. America created the highway system. America put a man on the moon. America rebuilt Europe and rebuilt Asia. We did a lot of really
Yeah.
muscular, amazing things as a government. What my kids are 28 and 23. What have they seen the American government do? Right? From the perspective of my two kids who came out of liberal arts schools, America is a place that was land stolen from the indigenous population, an economy built on the backs of slaves. We've despoiled the universe and elected Donald Trump twice. So you could forgive them if they're not that impressed
Yeah.
with the American exceptionalism that we grew up believing in. All right? So it's a problem that we're identified with government because the American people don't feel a connection to their government. 62% of Americans believe that if they make enough noise, they can make a corporation pay attention to them as a consumer. 62%. 4% of Americans believe that if they make enough noise, they can make their government pay attention to them as a citizen. 4%. That means 96% do not believe it. And if you're the party of government, that's a problem. That's a big problem, especially since we don't have power in government anymore.
Well, we have to learn how to use the rules of the Senate, for example, in the same way that the Republicans have so successfully stymied the Democrats. I don't think the Democrats are now doing everything they need. I think the message I'm taking from you is let's create the government that we want. Let's talk about the government that we want, and let's stop focusing on woke words and talk about it in terms that people already believe in because they're
Correct.
with us. And
Right.
that's what we need to do is to
Okay, but
use words
I
that
would
are with
restate that.
us.
I'd
Yeah,
restate that slightly, Jill. Let's start by creating the party that we want. Okay, and let's start by saying in a very public fashion that the left is a part of our party, but it is not the sum of our party, and it should not be the face of our party,
right.
and it really shouldn't be the voice of our party. So, for example, when the San Francisco Board of Education says we're not going to name schools after Abraham Lincoln anymore, he wasn't woke enough. That is the moment when every Democrat in Congress says that does not speak for me. I'm a big Lincoln fan. That does not speak for me. Okay, you do whatever you want to do, Board of Education.
Yeah,
I'm going to keep naming schools after Abraham Lincoln. That that kind of thing, where we are throwing the flag on ourselves
right.
so that the other party doesn't have the opportunity to do it.
Yeah, well, the other party has already taken away the renamed forts, and Fort Bragg is now Fort Bragg again after
Okay.
a Confederate. So,
Okay. So here's what I would say about that. Stop being offended by it. Stop being appalled by it. And start saying, how does that lower the price of eggs? How does that make it easier for you to buy a home? I would go to the American people and I would say, okay, The Republican Party has control of the White House, the Senate, the House, and the judiciary. They have more political power than any party in the history of America. What are they doing with it? They're firing hardworking FBI agents. They're renaming bases after Confederate generals. And they are violating the rights of American citizens. That's what they're doing with their political power. If you had that much political power, is that where you'd spend it? Would you remember in 2017 when he took office, the first bill they passed with all that power was H.R. 40, which made it easier for the mentally ill to get guns. That's where you want to spend your political capital?
I'd like to see the DNC chair, Martin, come out with some equivalent to the Donald Trump message about what we stand for in words that, as you said, emotionally reach the audience and get people on board to fighting back against all the things that are being done, whether it is closing down U.S. aid, whether it's closing down all abortion, whatever it is, the things that are happening are not the things that Americans want, and we need to communicate that. And with your help, many members of Congress are going to do a better job of this. And so thank you, not just for your great movies, but thank you for doing this for America.
I really appreciate it, and it's such a privilege to have this platform to talk to people. Thank you so much. We'll see you soon.